Hello everybody, my name is Colin Lewis. I'm columnist in Marketing Week magazine. I'm a professional marketer for the last 25 or so years, worked with some big brands across the UK, across Australia. But I'm not going to talk about any of that, not at all. What I'm going to talk about is what's called when the going gets tough. When the going gets tough. And this is particularly for marketers, advertising, guys who work in advertising, guys and gals who work in advertising, who might have lost their jobs, might be losing their jobs, or might be just fearful about the future. That's what I'm going to talk about. This is not some tips and trips or strategy or anything like that. It's purely around some experiences that I had over the last number of years that might be relevant and that you can apply to what you're going through right now. So you'll notice I said when the going gets tough. I didn't say the cliche after that, when the tough gets going, because that's totally irrelevant and I really don't like it at all. So first thing I want to say is, why should you listen to me rather than anybody else talking about when the going gets tough? What's unique about me compared to anybody else you're going to? Well, I want to cast your mind back to about 15 years ago. Now, it turns out that I am particularly qualified about speaking about working at home on your own a lot and not knowing where your next few shillings are going to come from due to a particular set of circumstances that happened to me about 15 years ago. And I want to kind of tell you about that first so you'll understand the kind of lessons that I learned that I'm going to give in the latter half of this particular presentation. So what happened? Let's call it over, say, a 5-year period. Year one, I took a big voluntary redundancy package from a company that I'd been working for that was a startup. It was a great experience, but they offered voluntary redundancy. It was lots of money, so I took that voluntary redundancy package. Great. Month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, getting up as far as 9 months not working, and it was okay, but maybe getting a little bit edgy. Then I get the job around 9 months after taking the voluntary redundancy, and happy enough to start the job. Didn't feel that great at the job, but got into it. And then halfway through the job, about maybe 6 months into the first year, I said, this is a place I can stay. I'm going to study and apply for an MBA. The company said they'd pay for the MBA. So I go out, I have to pay in advance, I remortgage my house, and I pay for the MBA, and I start the MBA. 6 weeks into this MBA, the company closed its office here in Dublin. And I was left high and dry with a 30 grand bill, with the mortgage, with no options, and my first set of exams in a very long period of time, 4 weeks later. And needless to say, it wasn't a particularly good time. But of course, because I was doing the MBA part-time, it was on a Friday and a Saturday, so I wasn't really employable. So I went through this period of where I was in a really good career trajectory to where down and then further down. And I didn't really work properly for the following year and a half. And I was spending a lot of time on my own at home. Everybody else was out working and I couldn't get a job. I applied for jobs, but nobody would take me because I wasn't available properly and I would have to take study leave and so on. And I can tell you it was a particularly difficult time. And there was really no way out of it. I just had to keep plugging away. And it wasn't a case of like, up and down, up and down. It was really down, really up, really down, really up. Till eventually got to the stage after about a year of this that I thought I might never really actually pull out of this properly. And it was, when the going get tough, the tough didn't get going at all, because actually what happened was I found, just like what a lot of us are experiencing during lockdown right now, is that I couldn't get myself to do anything. I couldn't actually work myself up to do anything. I'd be sitting some days just purely catatonic, not able to kind of boost myself up. Now, eventually, through fits and starts and through kind of spurts of energy, I managed to kind of pull things through. And of course, the fact I had to do exams and I had to do these projects kind of really pulled me out of things, particularly in the latter half of this 18-month period. And I had a couple of funny experiences as well, which were, you couldn't, of course, tell your friends about it because your friends were working full time. It was a boom period for the world economy, and yet I couldn't get a job. So they weren't very interested in listening to my stories. So eventually I just stopped talking and stopped asking for advice and stopped getting involved in things. So it was a pretty tough time. And then by around the end of year 3.5, get a job, get a great job, really happy, finish the MBA, and life's on a very fast upward trajectory, and I have an absolutely fantastic time, and I'm really, really happy again. Sadly, however, in year 5, what happens? The great crash of 2008. And who's the first one in the company to lose his job? Me. And there I am yet again facing the same thing of sitting around at home, unable to get a job, but actually now in the middle of the Great Depression. But funnily enough, that particular period was a real period of renewal for me, because I had been down this road before and it was no longer grim for me. In fact, I was quite happy. I think I ended up going on holidays or something like that, because I knew I could get through it. I had the resilience, I had the capability, and I had the confidence to actually get through it and know that there was something coming at the far end, none of which I had at the start of that 5 years, and I was able to come through it. And I want to kind of give you maybe 6 or 7 things that I learned over that period that are not some sort of simplistic things, they're actual real live things that I learned right through that whole period that I think you can apply. And I want to start with this concept. The first thing was, this thing I learned was, start with a beginner's mindset. Start with a beginner's mindset. Now, why do I say that? Well, you could argue at that time, particularly around year 1 of all these particular problems, I was looking backwards and I was kind of frustrated, and I kept saying, but I should be able to get a job. In fact, my friends were saying, you should be able to get a job. But the reality was I wasn't. That's just the way it was. I wasn't getting jobs. I wasn't even getting interviews. It was because of the nature of my previous experience. And it was only after a couple of years did I actually kind of really work it out and say, hey, what if I just rebase everything? What if I just erase everything I know? What if I just go and say, the past is not relevant? What I need to do is reframe my thinking and say, maybe these people are right, maybe they're wrong, it doesn't matter. But I need to kind of rethink everything through this concept of what I call a beginner's mindset. And kind of just forgetting about what worked in the past. Stop replaying what worked in the past and just erase it. And just kind of start looking at the future with looking at going, what are the new tools I need? What are the new thinking? What's the new thinking I need? Who are the new people I need in my life? And remember, I was at rock bottom. And I was trying to hold on to this concept of the past was right. Yeah, the past was right. And if I could just do things better, everything would be better. But as soon as I changed my frame of reference to start with a beginner's mindset, what if everything you know is wrong, and just began again? Now, I didn't totally throw out everything that was out there. But what I did do was go and say, I went off and studied copywriting. I went off and checked all these previous marketing masters that were out there that in the past I would have laughed at. And what I did was just go and say, I was bringing my own pride to the table. I remember the line from Pulp Fiction. He goes and says, you might have this voice in your head, and when you hear that voice, what you realize, that's just pride messing with your mind. And that's what it was. It was just pride messing with your mind. So the moment you kind of think, but maybe I know more, I know better, that's the moment to stop and say, I need to start with beginner's mindset. The second thing to do is think about, rather than focus on these events that are happening right now, really just focus on your own responses to the events. And so there's a little bit of a distinction there, which is, instead of thinking, what's going on with these events, focus on you and your responses to the events, which is a really very subtle distinction to make. Now, we can all see ourselves kind of getting involved in the moment and thinking about all the things that could happen, but actually focus on you and your responses, not on anybody else's responses, because they're the only ones you can actually control. And what I found was I was thinking about, oh, woe is me, this is happening to me. But actually, I couldn't control the events. I could only control my responses to them. In fact, the Stoics wrote about this 2,000 years ago. I could really only control my responses. Therefore, I had to develop my own new set of habits, my own new systems, and really just kind of rebuild myself from the outside and not worry about these external events. Those external events were going to happen regardless of what I did. So I had to really go and say, how do I refocus myself and start focusing on my positive response to those events? The third item I want to talk about is, it's not something that everybody wants to hear, but it's It's the one thing I had to do, which is kind of get tough on yourself. Get tough on yourself, ignore platitudes that you hear from other people. Okay, you'll hear a lot of people talking to you saying, no, it's okay, everything's fine, blah, blah, blah. And particularly for me, when I was looking for jobs, it was like, you'll get something will happen, and all the rest of it. And then I realized, I had to focus on ignoring all that and actually get tough on myself. Because if I listened to their platitudes, listened to the nice things people were saying, I kind of got lazy. I said, maybe they're right, maybe that's it. Maybe, maybe I'll just, I'll just take my foot off the throttle. Now, that sounds like I'm talking about doing something 24/7. It was far from that. I was doing 24/7. But when I could get in the moment, it was a case of total focus and actually doing something about it. The problem was for me is in the past, I'd listened to people saying, being nice to me and so on. Oh yeah, that'll be great. Something will happen. No, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. You've got to go and actually make it happen. So the moment you go and say something will happen, you go, nah. You go and say, you've got to get tough on yourself and don't actually listen to other people's platitudes. Now, how I ended up kind of reframing all that was, applying all that to myself, was that I focused on, I kind of went and said, as I said at the outset, when the going gets tough and, start with a beginner's mindset, I said, I probably wouldn't have hired me. I didn't have any particular skill that leapt out from my CV. I didn't have anything that made me anything less than vanilla. And so that was the thing. Get tough on yourself. Are you vanilla? Is what you sell, you as a person, as a product, is it vanilla? If it's vanilla, then you're not going to stand out. And we know what's going to happen. You can make some stab at the guess what's going to happen with the careers for marketers and for average people working in advertising over the next couple of years. People who are vanilla will not stand out. There's going to be a lot more competition for our roles. So get tough on yourself. That doesn't mean you're tough on yourself 24/7, but when the time comes, you got to get tough on yourself. The fourth thing I want to talk about is this concept of value creation. And it's a kind of an interesting concept because we don't really hear that much about it. And when I say value creation, what I'm talking about is people are going to be kind of driven into themselves. People are going to be a lot more focused. I've seen it myself, how I'm kind of a lot more internally focused than I can be. And you can vary from day to day, hour to hour, and week to week. But actually, if you think in terms of not about your own difficulties and actually focus on value creation for others as much as possible. Now, this is sometimes counterintuitive, and it doesn't come easy to a lot of people, or to some people, I should say. But actually watch yourself and say, how can I create as much value for other people all the time, rather than trying to get my oar in? And this is really around saying, understanding what's the value for them. Think about the world of value through their lens, not through your lens. A lot of people think about the world of value through their lens. Yeah? Well, and that's just not how it works. You have to think about the world of what's in it for the other person. And there's so much value extraction going on in the world. We see all these firms right now who are in the process of value extraction. What you want to be seen as is a value creator, a person with the ideas for the other person, a person who wants the best for the other person. So this idea of value creation and focusing on value creation is a kind of reframe. I don't like reading about people talking about leadership or any of that sort of stuff. I just go and say, focus yourself personally on value creation for the other person in your profession, in your friends, in your circle. Value creation for them. Part 5, I want to talk about something called optionality. And this is a really tricky one, okay? Because we're going to potentially go through some lean periods over the next while. And remember, I was saying my little 5 years of very serious ups and downs. But there was one thing that struck to me, which was, don't leap at the first thing, even when I was at my most broke. Don't leap at the first thing, even when I was at your most broke. Because the most important thing is to try and think long term. We're stuck in the short term, but we will need to try and project into the future, even just a tiny bit, try and capture a little bit of an idea about the future. And the most important thing that I've learned over the last 10 or 15 years is optionality. The most important option to choose is the option that gives you more options. The most important option to choose is the option that gives you more options. If you feel that somebody's offering you something that kind of narrows it down, narrows your focus, narrows your skill base, maybe could put you in a box, you don't really want to do that. So there's a little bit of, you got to hold on tight. Now, I had a specific experience of this. I can remember around year 3.5, 4 of these particularly tough times I went to. And I got offered a job. And the money was fine. The guys appeared to be okay who were offering the job. And I looked at this job and I went, I really need the money. But actually, I'm going to make myself worse if I hold on for this. I'm going to really make myself worse. And I turned out to be true. Now, it wasn't because I had some massive insight into the future. I just had the sense that this is going to narrow my options down and get me back to square one. And I don't want to be back in square one ever again. I always want to have options. So optionality, always choose the thing that gives you more options. The final point I want to make, part 6 of this, is around what I call opportunity thinking and creating an opportunity mindset. Now, I've written down some definitions here, so I'm going to read these definitions. The Oxford Dictionary defines opportunity as a time or set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something. A time or a set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something. It also provides the synonyms of opportunity, chance, lucky chance, golden opportunity, and it kind of conveys this importance of seizing the opportunity when it's created by favorable circumstances. I just would say opportunity created by circumstances. And what I realized in that period there, I was a little kind of narrow in my frame during that period of 5 years. My opportunity thinking was quite narrow. So you need to develop a concept, what I call opportunity thinking, seeing where opportunities could be. And also maybe betting yourself and betting your money and betting your time to go and do it. And I'm particularly, the quote that I want to read on this is from Nicholas Nassim Taleb. And it's from the book, The Black Swan. It'll explain what I'm talking about. He's a few lines in his book and it says, opportunity doesn't come often, so seize it when it comes. Seize any opportunity or anything that looks like an opportunity. They are rare, much rarer than you think. Many people do not realize they're getting a lucky break in life when they get it. If a big publisher or a big art dealer or movie exec or a hotshot banker or a big thinker suggests an appointment, cancel anything you've planned. You may not see such a window open again. That's from Taleb's Black Swan. Now, a lot of people don't really kind of try and really build that into their thinking. But really, I'm telling you, because I'm slightly older now, opportunities don't come that often. And you need to be there to go and say, hey, that's that thing. I'll give you one specific example of this. In the middle of all this particular difficult period, I saw a job with a company that I was very interested to work in. But it was a mid-level job. And then I went to the interview. The guy who interviewed me said, what are you doing here? You've got an MBA, you're doing this, you're doing that. You're like, what are you doing here? And I was like, well, I really want to work for this company. And I said, I'll take the opportunity. Nothing happened for 3 months. 3 months later, phone call comes in. Colin, that role doesn't exist anymore. The role is now the marketing director role. And where you're down to the last 2, will you come for the interview? And I end up getting the job. But I had an opportunity mindset 3 months earlier to say, I like that company. I'm going to apply for it, even though it's a rung or 2 at least below what I would have thought my level was. Remember, start with a beginner's mindset and think through opportunity. So let me read those kind of 6 things that matter for when the going gets tough. Start with a beginner's mindset. Forget about events that are happening around the world. Just focus on your responses. Get tough on yourself. Don't fall for platitudes. That doesn't mean I'm getting you to work 24/7, but just when you feel yourself a little bit like, no, get tough on yourself when the time comes. Focus on value creation. Focus on what's value for the other person. Optionality. Keep your options open, even when everybody else is screaming at you not to do so. And finally, create a mindset that is really around opportunity and thinking through opportunity and looking for that little door that's open and then going for it. If it means you've got to fly to New York and you're down to your last 300 pounds, well then maybe do that. That's where I ended up doing things. Like, even though I was down to my last few shillings, I still would go and spend them because I sensed that there was opportunity out there. Folks, that's the 6 things I think you need to develop when the going gets tough, based on my own particular experience of when life was particularly tough and I pulled out the far side. So that's why now I'm facing the future post-COVID with much more positivity, based on having gone through tough times before. If I could go through it, I definitely know you guys can out there as well. Okay. Let's wrap up. When the going gets tough, here's my recommendations based on some hard-won experience that I, to a certain extent, wouldn't wish on anybody else. So here's what I think is when the going gets tough, and how for you to think about the future and think about yourself and think about your own thinking over the next while. So let me read them out to you again. Start with a beginner's mindset. Forget about events that are going on and focus on your own response. Get tough on yourself. Don't fall for platitudes. And remember, I'm not saying be working 24/7. I'm just going, when the time comes, maybe be a little bit tougher on yourself. Focus on value creation. What's valuable for the other person? What's value for the company? What's value for the other person that you're dealing with, colleagues, friends? Focus on value creation. Optionality. Keep your options open. Even when a voice is screaming in your head not to, keep your options open. And the final point is this point around opportunity thinking. When that opportunity comes, and there will be opportunity, get on that plane, get on that bus, get on that bike, whatever it may be, and try to meet that person face to face once this whole thing is all over. Or send that email now. You never know. Just send the email now, even at this stage where things are still particularly tough. Opportunity thinking, opportunity mindset. Folks, thanks very much for spending some time with me and listening to my stories of all the bad times that happened in the past, that hopefully you can now pick up from and run with some of these ideas forward and make your future much better post-COVID, during COVID, after COVID. Listen, thanks a lot. If you want to get in touch and talk to me at any time about this sort of stuff, find me on LinkedIn, or you can get in touch with me on Twitter at Colin A. Lewis. And my Gmail address, get in touch, email me anytime, colinalewis@gmail.com. See you around. Thanks very much for your time.